Gregory Reynolds had always been a man of control, a professor who prided himself on his meticulous nature and rational mind. But in the span of just a few days, everything he thought he understood about his world unraveled. The blackmail from Tyler Donovan, a student who had failed one of Gregory's courses, threatened everything Gregory had worked for. His reputation, his career, his carefully constructed life, all were hanging by a thread. Tyler had discovered the secret affair between Gregory and Sophia Winters, a brilliant but troubled graduate student. The two had shared a bond of intellectual passion, and what had begun as a secret collaboration on research soon turned into something far more dangerous, a love affair neither was willing to expose. But Tyler's discovery had left Gregory with no choice but to play along with his demands. And Tyler had used this information as leverage, threatening to expose the affair unless Gregory paid him handsomely. The demand was simple. Gregory would provide Tyler with an A in every class he attended. If he didn't, Tyler would take everything away from him. The initial shock of Tyler's blackmail quickly faded, replaced by an overwhelming sense of panic. Gregory felt his control slipping, and in that moment, something inside him broke. The thought of losing his career, his place in academia, and everything he had built overwhelmed him. But worse still was the thought of Sophia being dragged down with him. She had become everything to him, and the possibility of her life crumbling because of his mistakes was more than he could bear. The days passed, with Gregory constantly on edge, trying to figure out how to deal with Tyler's threats. He couldn't go to the administration. There was no evidence to prove Tyler's blackmail, and besides, Gregory had no idea how deep Tyler's influence might have spread. In desperation, he turned to Sophia for advice, but their conversations had become strained. She was just as terrified as he was, and though she wanted to help, neither of them could find a way out of the situation. Then came the night when everything changed. Tyler had demanded that they meet in a secluded parking lot late at night, away from prying eyes, to discuss the terms of their agreement. Gregory and Sophia knew that this was the point of no return. They had to find a way to end Tyler's threats, or else their lives would be ruined forever. Gregory drove them to the meeting place, the headlights of their car cutting through the darkness. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his mind racing with thoughts of what could go wrong. The parking lot was empty, save for the flickering streetlights above. As they pulled in, Gregory saw Tyler's figure standing by his car, a smirk on his face as if he already knew he had won. Gregory felt his heart hammering in his chest as he parked the car and stepped out. Sophia lingered a few feet away, her eyes wide with fear. Tyler was confident, sure that he had Gregory cornered. He made his demands once again, a sense of entitlement lacing his words. Gregory, however, could barely hear him. His mind was elsewhere, consumed by the rising tide of fear and frustration. He had no choice anymore. The thought of Tyler destroying everything was too much to bear. The pressure of the situation built up until Gregory felt the cold steel of finality enter his mind. There was no longer any room for negotiation. Tyler had to be stopped. Without thinking, Gregory reached into the bag at his side where he had hidden a small pistol. In one swift movement, he pulled it out and fired. Tyler didn't have time to react. The shot rang out, echoing in the empty lot, and then Tyler's body crumpled to the ground with a sickening thud. Gregory stood over him for a long moment, his breath heavy, his pulse racing. He had done it. There was no turning back now. Sophia, who had been watching from a distance, let out a soft gasp. The reality of what had just happened seemed to sink in for her in that instant. But it was too late for remorse. The moment had passed. Gregory felt a numbness overtake him. The adrenaline of the moment faded quickly, replaced by a heavy, suffocating silence. Sophia came closer, her eyes wide with fear, but Gregory didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. They had just crossed the line that could never be uncrossed. Sophia helped him drag Tyler's body into the trunk of the car. They didn't speak, knowing that no words could change what had just transpired. The weight of the body was nothing compared to the weight in Gregory's chest. The decision had been made. Tyler would be hidden, his body left in a place where it would never be found, and Gregory and Sophia would move forward as though nothing had happened. They would act normal, pretend that their lives hadn't just been shattered in the pursuit of a secret that had become far too dangerous. The next few days were a blur of fear and guilt. Gregory could feel his mind starting to unravel, each moment a reminder of what he had done. The university continued as usual, the students attending their classes, the faculty meeting in the halls, but Gregory couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that his every move was under scrutiny. His classes felt like a performance, each lecture an act to distract himself from the darkness that loomed over him. Sophia, too, seemed changed. Though she never spoke of it, Gregory could see the fear in her eyes every time they were alone. They couldn't go back to their former relationship, the connection they had once shared. There was no returning from the decision they had made, and it was clear that neither of them would ever be the same. The body had been hidden, buried in a place where no one would find it. They had done what was necessary to protect themselves, to preserve the fragile world they had built. But deep inside, Gregory knew that the consequences of their actions would eventually catch up with them. No secret could stay buried forever. Days turned into weeks, and Gregory's life began to spiral. His every decision seemed fraught with consequences. He could feel the weight of Tyler's death hanging over him like a shadow, each passing moment a reminder of the line he had crossed. The guilt ate at him, gnawing away at his sanity. And then one day, all came crashing down. A student came forward with information, a rumor that had circulated quietly among a small group of classmates. They had heard about Tyler's disappearance, and they had questions. The investigation began, slowly at first, with subtle inquiries into Gregory's behavior, but soon it became clear that the university was taking notice. Gregory could feel the walls closing in on him, the pressure building once more. Sophia, too, was feeling the weight of their secret. The relationship they had once shared had been poisoned by the murder, and she was no longer the calm and composed graduate student she once was. The two of them had become prisoners of their own making, trapped in a web of lies and fear. And as the investigation deepened, it became clear that their secret wouldn't stay buried forever. The investigation began to take on a more official tone as campus security and local authorities got involved. The rumors about Tyler's disappearance had started to grow, and a few students had come forward, talking about his sudden absence and his previous interactions with Gregory. The more time passed, the harder it was to ignore the growing suspicion. Gregory could feel his mind unraveling with each passing day, the weight of the truth pressing down on him. The small, seemingly inconsequential details that he had thought he could control now began to spiral out of his reach. At first, the authorities had no concrete evidence linking him to Tyler's disappearance. No one had seen Tyler leave with Gregory, and the university had no security footage of that night. But they had other leads. They began to focus on Gregory's behavior, his erratic mood swings, his disheveled appearance, and the sense that he was trying too hard to maintain a facade of normalcy. Students noticed that Gregory seemed more distant, more nervous, and often in a hurry to get out of his office or leave the classroom. Sophia, too, was under scrutiny. Her demeanor had changed. She wasn't the confident student she had been before. Her anxious glances at Gregory, her tense interactions with others, it was clear that something had shifted. The pair had become more isolated from the rest of the faculty and students, their relationship strained by the weight of their shared secret. Then, one morning, the unthinkable happened. The body of Tyler Donovan was discovered. The discovery wasn't accidental. A student who had been working on a research project near the edge of campus had stumbled upon a shallow grave, hidden under a pile of brush in a remote section of the university grounds. When the authorities were called in, forensic teams confirmed the body's identity. The investigation ramped up in intensity. Police combed through every detail of Tyler's life, his last known interactions, his movements, and his connections. They interviewed students and faculty, piecing together a timeline that grew increasingly troubling for Gregory. And as the investigation deepened, more and more pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Gregory's behavior was now under direct scrutiny. The questions about his relationship with Tyler, about the affair with Sophia, and about his increasingly erratic actions had all become key points of interest. Investigators spoke with Sophia, who was visibly shaken, but she couldn't bring herself to say anything definitive. She was too scared, too bound by the secrecy they had shared. So Gregor refused to admit anything. He went through the motions of his daily life, teaching classes, attending meetings, but each moment felt like a performance. He had become an actor in his own life, playing a role that was slowly becoming more difficult to maintain. Every glance, every word, every interaction felt as if it was being scrutinized by invisible eyes. Sophia, meanwhile, was starting to crack. Her guilt over what had happened weighed heavily on her, and she began to question everything. The affair had started out as a thrilling intellectual connection, a passion for learning that had evolved into something deeper. But now, in the wake of murder, she realized the terrible cost of their actions. She had helped bury a body. She had watched as Gregory killed someone to protect a secret. And now there was no going back. Her once quiet existence had been shattered, and the future she had once envisioned seemed impossible now. Every night she would lie awake, replaying the events that led them to this point. Every moment, every decision had brought them closer to this disaster. The pressure of the investigation weighed on her, and she began to doubt Gregory's ability to keep their secret. He was unraveling, and with every passing day, it became clearer that their time was running out. They had made a choice, but they had not anticipated the consequences. Then came the tipping point. The authorities finally zeroed in on Gregory. Evidence began to surface that linked him directly to the scene of Tyler's death. A surveillance camera from a nearby store had captured Gregory's car in the area on the night Tyler had disappeared. There were also discrepancies in his alibi. His whereabouts on the night of the murder didn't add up. But the final blow came when forensic evidence tied him to the shallow grave. A small piece of clothing found near the body had traces of his DNA. The arrest came swiftly after that. Gregory was taken into custody without much resistance, his face pale and his mind numb from the weight of the consequences. The world he had worked so hard to build, his career, his reputation, his relationship with Sophia, had collapsed in an instant. Sophia, devastated by the realization that they had reached the end of their road, tried to keep her distance from the investigation. She knew that if she were implicated in any way, it would destroy her future as well. But the guilt she carried with her was suffocating. She couldn't stop thinking about Tyler's death, about the way she had helped bury him, and about how everything had gone so horribly wrong. No amount of rationalization could erase the fact that she had participated in a crime. And now, she would have to live with the consequences. In the weeks that followed Gregory's arrest, the university became a focal point of media attention. The murder investigation dominated headlines, and the scandal surrounding the professor's affair with a graduate student only added to the public's fascination. Rumors swirled about the relationship between Gregory and Sophia, and people began to question the nature of their connection. Was the affair just a cover for something darker? Had they planned the murder together? For Gregory, the trial was an inevitable march toward his ruin. His defense team struggled to find any grounds for a reasonable explanation, and the evidence stacked against him was overwhelming. In court, he sat in silence, his face impassive, as his life fell apart around him. The weight of his own decisions bore down on him, and there was no escape from the truth. Sophia, who had tried to remain a distant figure in the background, was ultimately forced to testify. Her role in the murder was never fully clear. Did she know Tyler was going to die? Did she participate in the burial of his body? The prosecution painted a damning picture of her involvement, and her testimony was riddled with contradictions and inconsistencies. Her heart was torn in two as she tried to distance herself from the crime while still protecting Gregory. But in the end, the jury wasn't convinced. The trial ended with Gregory being found guilty of second-degree murder. The sentencing came shortly after, and the judge handed down a lengthy prison term. Sophia's future was left uncertain. While she was not directly charged with murder, she was expelled from the university, and her academic career was destroyed. Their lives, once filled with promise and ambition, had been reduced to ashes. They had destroyed everything they had built in the pursuit of a dangerous secret. In the end, they were left with nothing but the cold truth of their actions and the knowledge that there was no going back. For Gregory and Sophia, there was only one question left to answer. Could they ever live with what they had done? Man, this case is a wild ride, huh? A professor caught up in a web of love, lies, and murder. It's almost like something straight out of a thriller. Tyler's death, the cover-up, and the shocking twists. It's tough to even wrap your head around. And those final moments, who could have seen that coming? It really makes you think about the lengths people will go to protect their secrets. I want to know what you all think about this one. Drop a comment below because honestly, I'm still processing all the crazy turns this case took. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. The names, the details, and the sentences of this case are not real. These made-up scenarios allow us to explore suspenseful situations without exploiting real-life tragedies. Our goal is to create thought-provoking mysteries while respecting the privacy and dignity of real people. Thank you for watching, and let us know your thoughts below.